Imagine a world without faces, without voices, without a single human touch. Not for a day, not for a week, but for 18 years. This isn't a dystopian novel. It asks the true story of a man who was locked away from humanity and what happened when the door to his cage finally opened. The sound that defined his life was the slam of a steel door, sealing him in a concrete box. 18 years. One cell. Zero human contact. What does that do to a person? What's left of the mind? The soul, after nearly 2 decades of absolute silence. Our story begins not in the cell, but on the outside, with the flash of police lights and the cold click of handcuffs. Before he was a ghost in the system, he was a man accused of a crime. We don't need to dwell on the specifics of his case, because what happened next transcends any single verdict. The justice system, in its attempt to punish, subjected him to a fate many consider worse than death. Complete and total isolation. He was escorted down a long, sterile hallway, the echoes of his own footsteps, the last complex sound he'd hear for a long time. The destination was a special unit, a place for the worst of the worst, but in reality, it was a place where human beings were stored, not rehabilitated. His new home was a box, a small, concrete cell, barely larger than a king-sized bed. There was a slab of concrete for sleeping, a toilet, and a sink. A single, dim light bulb, often shielded, cast long, eerie shadows. The only window to the outside world was a small slot in a thick metal door, a slot that was a source of both hope and despair. This wasn't just a room. It was an environment scientifically designed to break the human spirit. There were no books, no windows to the outdoors, no distractions. Just 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. For the first few days, maybe he held on to hope. Maybe he paced, yelled, banged on the door. But soon, the crushing reality set in. This was it. This was his entire world. Days bled into weeks. Weeks into months. The only marker of time was the predictable rhythm of his routine. The clank at the door, the small slots sliding open, a tray of bland, tasteless food pushed inside. He'd reach for it, his fingers maybe brushing the cold metal, the closest he'd get to any sensation from the outside. Then, the slot would slide shut, another clank, and the silence would rush back in, heavier than before, 3 times a day. That was his only interaction, an unseen hand delivering sustenance. He never saw the guard's face. He never heard a voice, just the mechanical sounds of the prison operating around him, a machine he was trapped inside. To stay sane, he created his own routines. Push-ups in the morning, pacing from one wall to the other, counting his steps, tracing patterns on the concrete with his finger, anything to keep the mind occupied, to stop it from turning on itself. But how do you track time when every day is identical? He tried at first, scratching marks on the wall, but soon, the days blurred. Was it Tuesday? Was it July? The seasons changed outside, but in his climate-controlled box, it was always the same. Time became a thick, soupy fog. He would have conversations in his head, replaying every memory he had, every movie he'd seen, every song he'd ever heard. He'd talk to his family, his friends, people he hadn't thought of in years. They were all there, in his mind, the only company he had. He would laugh at old jokes, cry over past heartbreaks. These mental projections were his lifeline. But as the years stretched on, the memories started to fade, the faces becoming less clear. The real world was dissolving. The mind, when starved of stimulation, starts to create its own. After a few years, the silence was no longer silent. He started hearing things, whispers in the corners, footsteps that weren't there. The shadows on the wall began to move, to twist into figures. At first, he knew they weren't real. He fought it, trying to ground himself in the solid reality of his cell. But after 5 years, then 10, the line between reality and hallucination began to blur. He started talking back to the voices. He gave names to the shadows. He wasn't just talking to himself anymore. He was having conversations with the ghosts his own mind had conjured to save itself from imploding. This wasn't madness in the traditional sense. It was a survival mechanism. His brain, desperate for social interaction, was manufacturing it from scratch. This extreme solitude didn't just warp his mind, it ravaged his body. With no sunlight, his skin grew pale and thin. The lack of varied movement caused his muscles to atrophy. His body, once strong, became weak and frail. His hands would tremble, a common side effect of prolonged sensory deprivation. His eyes, unaccustomed to focusing on anything farther than a few feet away, lost their ability to see long distances. They were tired, sunken eyes, holding the weight of thousands of empty days. He was aging prematurely, the stress and deprivation carving deep lines into his face. He was a man in his 40s who looked like he was in his 60s. The human body is not meant to exist in a vacuum. It needs sun, movement, and variety. His body was shutting down, just as his mind was being rewired. Then, one day, after 6,570 days of the same routine, something different happened. The usual clank of the food slot didn't come. Instead, there was a new sound, a key turning in the lock. A sound he hadn't heard in 18 years. The heavy steel door, his constant companion and captor, began to creak open. A blindingly bright light flooded the cell, forcing him to shield his eyes. It was the first time in nearly 2 decades he had seen natural daylight. Standing in the doorway was a person, a real, 3-dimensional person. His brain struggled to process it. He had seen faces in his mind for so long, but this was different. It was overwhelming, frightening. Freedom had arrived, but it didn't feel like a release. It felt like an intrusion. He was led out of the cell, his legs unsteady. The world outside was an assault on his senses. The sheer volume of it, all the chatter of other people, the distant hum of traffic, the chirping of birds, it was a cacophony that felt physically painful. His ears, accustomed to silence, couldn't filter the noise. The open space was dizzying. After living in a tiny box, the endless sky felt like it was going to swallow him. He saw crowds of people, a river of faces, colors, and movements. It was too much. He instinctively recoiled, wanting to retreat back to the simple, predictable quiet of his cell. The world he had dreamed of for 18 years was now a terrifying, alien landscape. The skills you need to survive in society, how to make small talk, how to read facial expressions, how to navigate a crowd had all withered away. He was a free man, but he was more alone than ever. Standing on a busy street, surrounded by people, he felt completely isolated. He didn't know how to connect. He didn't know how to exist. The prison had taken his years, but the solitude had taken his ability to be human. Freedom, the thing he had craved for so long, had come too late. He was a ghost, haunting a world that had moved on without him. This story is a stark reminder that we are social creatures, wired for connection. We need each other not just for comfort, but for our very sanity. The cruelest punishment isn't locking someone in a room. It's locking them away from us. Thanks for watching. If you found this story thought-provoking, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the human experience.